Let's go. Hello everyone, I'm Dan Mazur. I will be moderating this panel. It's called Process and Style. We have four really wonderful artists who we're going to talk about process and style with. Three artist entities, because one of them is a collaborative team. I'm starting with Nate Powell. The great Nate Powell, ladies and gentlemen. Nate began as a self-publishing independent cartoonist, including his series Walkie Talkie. He moved from there to solo graphic novels, many of which the solo ones he wrote and drew, but he wrote and drew graphic novels both solo and in collaboration, including Swallow Me Whole, Any Empire, The Silence of Our Friends, which is a collaboration. And then more recent years, he has brought the sensibilities and storytelling skills of an independent cartoonist to a very mainstream and important historical series, March. Nate Powell. Oh, and I should say in collaboration with Andrew Aden and Congressman John Lewis. Joel Gill, pictured. Joel Gill. Joel is a painter and chair of the foundation department at New Hampshire Institute of Art, and also a cartoonist. He also started self-publishing his mini-comic series Strange Fruit, which grew into the graphic novel Strange Fruit: Uncelebrated Narratives from Black History, which in turn grew into a series of full-length graphic novels, also based on uncelebrated narratives from Black history. And this series is called Tales of the Talented Tenth. It's had 2 installments so far. Bass Reeves and Bessie Stringfield, sorry. Blanking on names, even of historical figures. Joel Gill. Finally, we have, from the great country of France, Kerascoët, which is the, somehow I'm missing my note in this version. Anyway, Kerascoët is the collective name of the team Sébastien Cosset and Marie Bonpuy. Hope I said that right. Sorry for not having it written there. Do I really have to lean in like this the whole time? No, I don't, do I? Yeah. So Kerascoët has been working in French bande dessinée, which means comics, for over a decade, including 2 installments of Donjon, the series by Louis Trondheim and Joan Sfar, and 3 books. Well, actually, the Donjon books are translated into English. In America, they're best known for these 3 books, these 3 albums, which have all been published in English. Miss Don't Touch Me, which was a collaboration with Hubert. Beautiful Darkness, which was a collaboration with Fabienne Velmen. And Beauty, also a collaboration with Hubert. More recently, they are also working on a series of children's books, unfortunately not yet available in English, called Les Chouks. Kerascoët. So this cover of March signifies that we will begin our process talks with Nate Powell. If you want to come up here and yeah, grab any one of those mics, pull it out of the stand, and then I'm going to run through your slides, and you can sort of talk us through the... Does this work?
Okay. Hey, everybody.
You can talk us through the process that they illustrate.
Sure thing. So basically, I just divided this up into the two hemispheres in which I make comics. So first, I'll just run through. This is a general rundown of how I deal with collaborations with other writers that is more highly specific to March for various reasons. This is a sample page of script from the first March book, one in which Andrew and the Congressman and I were still learning the process of collaborating with each other specifically. And one thing that's great about comics is that there's no longer a set way to deliver a comic book script. There might be like 8 different kind of standard script methods by which an artist can work. So a lot of this is I work physically, I print out the script, I was a little heavy-handed in the first book, chopping up captions, knocking them out, using the show don't tell rule, and importantly, I was making a couple of quiet edits to captions and voiceover, but it took a while before I realized that John Lewis, as a lifelong oral storyteller, had been wording things the same way for decades, and so I really had to check myself and kind of dial back my level of heavy-handedness in adapting some of the language. So from here, I would usually burn through 10 pages of thumbnails at a time, just in one sitting. And then I'll thumbnail the entire book, and then move. And really, that's strictly more than composition. I think it's to establish an appropriate pace for the book.
And just to give people an idea, what would be the scale that these drawings are?
These might be like, at most 3 inches tall, 2 to 3 inches tall. And before it gets to the thumbnail stage, my brain is very visual, and I already know what it's going to look like. So a lot of this is just recognizing that physically there's enough space to pack everything in, and thus that controls the flow of time as the reader is working. So these are thumbnails of the previous script page.
Either just done in pencil on plain printer paper?
Yeah, everything that I do is physical, mostly because I graduated from high school the year before there were computers in my school, and I graduated from art school the year before I had to take computer classes. So I can use Photoshop to scan my art, and that's it. So then I moved to pencils, and these are actually very tight for my pencils. I do about 80% of my thinking with the ink, but these were tight for the purposes of working with collaborators. This is of young John Lewis's first arrest in front of the Woolworths in downtown Nashville. And then from there, I would move through a line art layer, and then without scanning the line art or anything, I would just move straight into an ink wash, by which I would take the same black India ink and I would dilute 3 tones of gray and put them, well, I'd run a hair dryer. I learned the hard way. I had to blow dry every page before I put the ink wash on. Or else there would be occasional bleeding in heavy spots of the line art. And then I'll go back in, and for certain effects, I'll use pencil or whatever for reflections or TV screens. So that's my process, and even with my own work, I've started using ink washes and tone work. So this helped set the stage for how I'm going to do even my own books in the future. I very much appreciated the parameters by which I had to follow, certain kinds of reference and research, things I never thought about before. And it has definitely influenced the way that I do my own weird stories from here on. As March progressed and as the movement itself expanded far beyond the confines of just one person's perspective, not only did I have to double my output so that I was starting and finishing 2 pages every day 5 to 6 days a week. But I started having to actively reference and research things in conjunction with my co-writers and with our editor. So essentially my work table, I have a drawing table and this is my computer table, and it basically just became just a mountain of just garbage filled with like computer printouts and reference books. We realized that there were unique opportunities to correct the historical record in some cases and to contribute to it, especially as the books were being used as history in classes. But that also meant we had to be that much more thorough and responsible. So yeah, that's my typical book 2, book 3 drawing situation, 2 pages at a time. Kind of book 3, I never even scanned the pencils to that book. It had to be done so quickly, but also we were adapting to the demands of reference and research and of the new things we were uncovering. So I was just burning through 10 pages a week without even documenting the pencils. So occasionally I would get a chance to just take a photo. That's it. Now for my own books, typically what I do, I don't write a script at all. I wait for 3 things to happen. I usually get a big idea that rolls out, that's the overarching themes of my story and what's important for me to express. I used to keep a lot of lists of little scenes and moments that I would see in the world around me or reflections that I would have. And then I would just wait for a character to emerge in my imagination that I really cared about. And once that character emerged, I could start trying to structure these moments in little scenes so that it was saying something about the big idea itself. So this is my basic outline work for what is my next book, which it's no longer called Cover, it's now called Come Again. Once I get to the outline stage, I spend a lot of time working through that. I feel like I'm a much weaker writer than I am an artist. So I'll spend a couple of years trying to refine that into something that can stand on its own ground in any way. And then I move through the thumbnails in very much the same way, 10 to 20 pages at a time, recognizing the pace, being a little more playful with the compositional elements, just because I have the freedom to do so with a little bit less accountability. And then moving from those thumbnails, typically what I do with my own books is I'll do rough pencils for the entire book. And this is as tight as my pencils get generally. And I'll print them out, and then I make edits and I work the dialogue in just in a folder that I have with pen. Once that's done, then I'll send this rough version to Chris Staros or to Lee or to whoever my editor may be. And because I'm a weaker writer than an artist, I've discovered that spending a few months having long phone conversations with Chris Staros, for example, about some of the finer points of the story itself, and then working through 4 or 5 new drafts of the story and sending them back and then talking about them on the phone again and again, makes it so that when it's time for me to ink, I can just burn through, I don't know, 300 pages of inks in 8 months or something. I feel like the weak points are exposed here in the pencil and in the dialogue stage. Often it's by saying too much, both in words or being over-explanatory in a visual sense. And once that's knocked out, it's pretty smooth sailing beyond that point.
Yeah, I think that's probably about it.
Okay.
So my process is a lot different. I don't work with collaborators at all. I work digitally. This is a natural picture of me. And so I work digitally. I have, this is an older Cintiq. I've actually upgraded, so I have a Cintiq. I have 2. I have a Wacom Cintiq 27 QHD at home. And then I have a Cintiq Companion that I carry around with me. And once I started carrying the Cintiq Companion around, even my thumbnails started to become digital, so I do digital thumbnails. I actually even do thumbnails on my phone. I have the phone that doesn't blow up. I have the one previous to the one that blows up. I have that one. And I use it specifically because I want to draw on my phone. I want to draw all the time. And when I don't have that, I have a sketchbook in my pocket. So the first step for my book is to sort of like, when I'm thinking about a story, specifically the story of Bessie Stringfield, is to read as much about a historical figure as I possibly can. So I try to like read everything that's ever been written about them. I try to find anything that they've ever written, any interviews, any articles, anything that I know, so that when somebody tells me like, what are you working on, Joel? I can just like, well, I'm working on this, right? To get that sort of in my head. From there, I move on to just trying to figure out what the people look like, if they're actual representations of people. So this is an early study of Bessie Stringfield. Once I get a story and an idea about what she looks like, I start writing down the ideas for the story. So if you look at the top of each one of these like hieroglyphic chicken scratch things that you're looking at right now, it says family, 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 because in my story, Bessie Stringfield doesn't have a family. And so for her, it seemed like she was always looking for something. And so I wanted family to be the hook. So I kept writing in, like part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, part 5, trying to figure out how to get the story. And then once I get that, I start getting like really clear understandings about what the story is supposed to look like, what she's supposed to be doing. I started like, I do a lot of like weird things, like I draw like boxes and sort of like square, like these lines where like, this is how many stories are going to be, like this is how many pages, this is this kind of thing, and I write down like, if you look at Matt Madden and Jessica Abel's book, Making Comics or Writing, Drawing Words and Writing Pictures, there's a thing in there about atoms, like what you want to happen on a page and how you want that page to move from one section to the other and how those two pages connect. So that's part of the notes, like what I want, what I want to be in that specific page, and then what I want to connect to it. From there, I started doing thumbnails. I have some students in the audience, and they'll tell you thumbnails are the key to world peace. So I thumbnail religiously. I thumbnail all the time. I do a lot of thinking about composition and the way the pages are set up. I always thumbnail 2-page spreads at a time, and think about how that process will work when I'm doing it. And this is all digital, so it's a digital file that keeps getting expanded and expanded. I keep it in a Google Drive document, I keep it on a computer, and I keep it on a hard drive so it never disappears. I have like 27 copies of the thumbnails for this. It's kind of ridiculous. And I keep expanding it and expanding it. And you can see like I'll mark some things down, or I'll mark stuff out, or I'll cut things out. From here, what I typically do, and so if you go back one more, Dan, you see that I've written under there, those are the atoms, like this is the thing that I want to make sure that I don't forget to put on that page. Like don't forget that this is the central point of that page. Because as you can, if you ask any cartoonist who works on long books, like eventually you might get really super into drawing this building and forget that you were supposed to be focusing on the person over here in the corner, you know what I mean? So like, it's just those kind of notes that I give myself. From here, and there's a skip the step, and I don't know what happened, but I take those little thumbnails that you just see and I blow them up really big in Photoshop, and I literally put those thumbnails on a 2-page spread. That's the exact size and scope. And I use Photoshop, and I also use Clip Studio Paint. You might see it as Manga Studio. I think I would have actually been using it a lot sooner if it was actually called Clip Studio Paint, not Manga Studio. For some reason I thought Manga Studio, I'm like, yeah, I'm not using anything with the name manga on it. Even though I like it, but I was just like, yeah. But it's actually a really good program to use for drawing comics. It's kind of like the difference between going to like Lowe's and going into a woodworking shop. You know what I mean? You can get all of the stuff in Lowe's that you need for woodworking, but you're not going to be sure where you can find it. But if you go to a woodworking shop, it's all right there. You just pick it up off the shelf. That's sort of like the difference between Photoshop and Manga Studio. And so what I did for this book, and I didn't do it for any of my other books, but I'm doing it now moving forward because I have editors. And so what I did was I actually thumbnailed out everything in legible format. So not super finished, because like Nate, I do a lot of my inking, like sort of my thinking in ink or pixels. I do a lot of that, but I wanted to have the entire story so that the editors could go in, because when you're dealing with editors, you don't want to have drawn an entire 2-page spread, colored it, and then come back and go, could you make this 1 page and then put it up? Like, it's just like, no, I can't. Like, I just did this. Like, this was like 2 days of my life. You want me to redo this? So what I did was I put everything in, and I put my word balloons in, and I put all of the things in that needed to be edited, because I'm a horrible speller. Grammar and language escapes me. So I put this all in so that they could go through and look at it. Once they approve everything, after they've read it and seen everything, then I go back in and I put the inks in. And at this point, go to the next page, I pay students that go to our school to put flats in for me. And the flats are ridiculous. Like,
maybe people don't know what flats are.
That's what I'm going to explain. So the flat colors are all of those like solid colors that are just ridiculous, like, you know, a yellow boat, purple boat, you know, like, and it gets crazier and crazier until I've got Klansmen in my book. At one point she was making like fuchsia colored Klansmen, which is sort of like amazing. So like I put these flat colors in, and what the flat colors do is it keeps me from having to go back in and having to fill in those colors. Like, so when you're doing Photoshop, if you have like a black area, if you're doing digital, you have like a solid area, you might want to fill that area with a color. And if it doesn't work, what you end up doing is like filling the entire thing. Then you have to undo it and go back and then find that one little like 2, you know, pixel spot where that color has bled through, and then fill in that one. Like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to pay somebody who I can afford to pay somebody to do that for me. So, so I paid a student to go in and do that. So she went in and put in all of the flat colors. And so from there I go in and I do all the coloring, and I use a lot of, so I put in all the colors, I put the flat colors in, I put all the shadows in. And if you look in most of my books, there's always like this little like, it looks like there's like, I'm using like parchment paper, or somebody's like, oh, is it this parchment paper? I'm like, man, it's the back of a notebook. I literally take the back of a notebook, scanned it in, and I put that in over top of all of the colors, which does 2 things. It unifies all the colors. Fun fact, if you want to unify your colors, add a color to the whole thing and change the opacity of it. It unifies all the color, and it puts an interesting texture in it. From there, it gets the word balloons, everything is put in, and then I start putting, you know, light layers, like that little light spot on the floor is like a separate layer. So I start doing those kind of things and put like little details in it. And then that's for, after that, that's it. That's the book. And then I send it to the editors and the design team, and they spend the rest of the time cutting it up and putting it in pages, putting it in InDesign. So that's it.
So you had an English presentation, now you will have a French one with English words. So this is about, we change our style and we change our techniques with Mary on each of our books. So this is for beauty, and for beauty we work with a writer, Hubert. And he has the particularity to be a writer and also a colorist. So he's at the beginning of the book and in the end. And it's all the book is real collaboration between him and us. And it's like a strange fight. We all struggle, and at the end we try to build something. For beauty, in the French industry, the classical books are like 46 pages. So as we like to give lots of information, we didn't have much space. In US, the book Beauty is the integral for three books. So we had to put lots of information on one page. So that's why this is very rempli.
Dense.
Dense, yeah. We are all handcraft. We don't use computers. We are the same generations. The computers went after the year after the same. So for us, it's more simple to use, and it's more like sensitive. You can erase it and can put it in your trash can. So the sketches are quite even lighter than this one. This one is a little.
Maybe I pushed it so it would be legible.
Oh no! But it's you can see the other one is much like we we do, and it's only to. I think we try to make all the elements in the sketches, but not the real drawing, to keep the pleasure of drawing while we are inking, because inking is still drawing. It's not just as a sketch.
So this is the same page.
Yeah, and as you can see, we changed our mind.
This is very interesting. If you look, you can see how the actions move around within this composition.
We took so much space, and we had enough, so we had to put another part of the story. So and
the big panels, the exterior.
But it was important for us to have one big panel with the landscape, so we managed to have things like that. And we had to skip one of the parts at the beginning when she arrives at her house. So this is how it works. We speak a lot about the story with Hubert, and he gave us this kind of page, and he liked to do that himself in order to see if what is written in the panel. Yeah. He fits in the panel because he talks a lot, he writes a lot, and he has to see by himself that it won't work if he puts too much. But at the beginning, he gave us just notes like you showed, and it won't work because it was so we had no place to draw at all, and we told him no, we can't draw here. If you put the text here, we have one page of text.
So this is his handwriting describing what will be in each panel, and then
exactly. And after we do this one is as the fidèle, how do you say it? What? Yeah, to what he did. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes we change what he has done. We have always the freedom to change, but this one is like he did, and so we make only very smooth sketches just to feel the composition, and after we go to the inking. And the inking in this particular book we did in two colors, three colors, just white, with ink pen, technical ink pen, and some gouache. It's called Posca pen also, so that some parts have no border, no outline, and we can still draw with the color. And after Hubert took those pages with this kind of color, and it translated in other colors.
I have some of the
Yeah, this is the Posca pen. You can see we draw as we are inking. It's always drawing. It's important for us, and it's like playing with the lines and try to do things like a wooden puzzle where you got cats and so this one is the original.
This is the final page as you give it back to Hubert.
Exactly.
I don't have the same page, but this is
And after we put the color by computer.
And then I wanted to show a few slides from another project that you did a very different process.
Yes.
Using darkness.
This one we did mostly with pencils, like this one. And after so this is actually the real line, finished inking with only pencil. And after we scanned it and we put the line more darker, and we printed in very, very small, like, I don't know, inches. It's like that. And we put only the lightnings with with only one color in order so that we can both do the colors, because either Mary and me, we both do the coloring, but we wanted to have coherence in the pages about the lightning and
the value of the light and dark.
And so I did all this.
So you want to go back?
No. So this one is very slow, and after we tried to catch the energy of the very small sketches and to keep it on the pages, in order to be really readable. I don't think the world. We try to make pages that you can read without having to read the text. Each comics we're working on, it's for people that can't read. So it's important for us to always know when you look at what's going on, and don't have to think a lot about understanding the panel, what is in the panel. We're working on it. And we do the watercolor on the pages we print it.
You take the small thumbnails that you just do one color of ink wash on, and you blow those up?
No, it was that we scanned the line. We print a small one for the little sketches, and we print a larger one to do that.
So you just use the
same line,
other one as reference.
Exactly.
Okay. So now, I wanted to bring the conversation into style and about the interaction between sort of graphic or storytelling style and process. So my question would take the form of saying, have you had times in which, when you've changed your process, you found that it affected your style in a noticeable positive or negative way? And then, or conversely, have you had a time where you wanted to change your style and used a change process, either in the steps that you were doing or the materials, in order to create a different feel and a different style for yourselves? Who wants to jump in on that?
Some of my work is outside on the wall as part of the show. Some of my original Strange Fruit work when I did the mini comics and Strange Fruit, I celebrate Narratives from Black History. That's all in pencil and paper and ink. And I started moving more digitally, specifically because it was just like I would do these pencils, then I would do the ink, and then I would scan them and I'd stitch them together, and so it was like, why am I doing that when I have this digital tablet? Why don't I just do it all here? And once I started doing things digitally, it does change your process, specifically in coloring, because I found that there are things that I could do where, if you look at my work in Bass Reeves and in Bessie Stringfield specifically, you'll see that I don't really draw trees anymore. I usually take just like a lasso tool and make a tree shape and then fill it in. And I think that works. You know, it's like one of those things, it's like, why am I drawing that when this thing could work as like a solid background? It's not like what you guys do when you're drawing with color. And so I do things like that, and I think that the process by which I went through to create, to get to the place that where I'm working now, will continuously change. I mean, you'll do things like, for me, it's like I'll cut a layer off, and I'm like, oh, that's dope. And so I'll just delete that layer. But I just spent the whole time working on it because I'm like, I didn't need it. Like, it was just like I cut it off by accident, and now it looks really good. So, and so I try to like do things like that occasionally to feed what, you know, like you don't want to like, you know, I think style is a scary thing to get, you know, connected to, because I think that if you decide that you have a specific style, you don't grow anymore. Like, you almost like, I'm afraid to try this new experimental thing because it's not my style. So like, I would always say, like, specifically with style, like, it's one of those things where you just have to, but you have to understand that whatever work you're going to make, people are going to connect it to you because it's coming through you, and it's going to have some connection to the stuff that you did previously, even if that stuff you felt like you did previously sucks. You know what I mean? Like, oh, don't talk about this, but you can see the development. Like, you can see there's like that. I mean, because the work from Strange Fruit is, I think, when I look back on it, it's dramatically different than the work that I do now. And so, like, looking at that stuff, which I think sucks, you know, looking at the stuff, man, you can still see the connection. You know the same person did it, but this person has gotten better over time. So that's sort of how I think about it.
I know a pivotal moment in my comics life where this question was reckoned with. I was working on this book called Any Empire, and simultaneously doing this book called The Silence of Our Friends. And because they had to be done at the same time, one was largely fiction, one was almost entirely nonfiction, and a period piece. I needed a simple, stylistic method, really for my own enjoyment and sanity, to divide my day up. So I knew in the mornings I would draw Any Empire, in the afternoons I would draw Silence of Our Friends. So up to that point, I had strictly done black and white line art comics. I knew I had to do 2 Any Empire pages every morning and a Silence page in the afternoons. So that was the first time I decided to experiment with these gray washes. And really, it was just to break up my day. However, as soon as I got comfortable with the washes, I realized that with my Arthur Adams, Michael Golden loving crosshatchy self that had brought me into comics, what I was really aiming for was nice, clean, gray areas to be filled. And finally, I was getting that. And so in one way, it forever changed the line art I did on my own comics. It minimized a lot of that hatching, a lot of that gradation, and made me a lot more economical. But what was very interesting to move back into across all my own art is through Silence of Our Friends and all of March, because I do everything physically on the page, I really don't have a lot of room to make corrections. I can't move panels or can't move word balloons around. I can't really use whiteout at all because since I'm essentially watercoloring over it, it leaves an indelible area that's just whiteout, or that forever, gets wet again. It's not fun. So I try to work out any changes before I get to even the inking stage, because there's really no going back for me. I've had to redraw a few complete pages of March because of moderate errors or changes. But the way that sort of took a lot of the pressure off of just putting lines on paper is the easiest fix was always just to, instead of correcting an error, was to just continue moving forward and add shadows, add black areas, add silhouettes, and thus rethink the composition of a panel completely. You have to sort of program it, you have to reverse engineer it. You have to create a foreground object, for example, that will cast a shadow that will fix an error, or that will allow enough negative space that you can inject some white lettering into the shadow. And once I realized that none of that matters, all any of us ever read of each other's comics is what gets credit. Nothing else matters outside of that end product. And it was very liberating. So even the new book that I'm working on is using gray washes and using an additional watercolor layer over it. So it's that same level of accountability. I either need to redraw a page completely, or I need to keep on pushing these quick decisions to just add shadow, add form that will allow me to continue moving forward before I have to go back and spend time correcting.
And then you two, probably more than the others, work in styles which to me look very different. Like you have this whole different aesthetic. So
I try to explore different techniques and in order to stay fresh and explore our style and discover new things, and we try to change our process on every book. For us, a book is a universe, and it has an identity beyond us.
It's like at the beginning of the book we are changing the rule of the game we will play together in order to do it. So we decide the constraints we will use for beauty. It was to have very neat lines, all very close line and graphic, and it was not the same at all for Beautiful Darkness. Beautiful Darkness, it was like very, we kept our own way to draw, because we don't draw the same at all. She drew in 2D and I draw in 3D. And it's very complementary, but also we have to mix. So sometimes for beauty we erase our differences, but for Beautiful Darkness we try to work with them and create something that mixes I draw more like realistic, so I leave the more realistic parts, and Mary draws very lifeful characters, so she little tiny. And after it was with the watercolor that it was the watercolor that united.
You both, right, you said you traded back and you both colored.
Yeah, exactly. So we learn how to make the book as we are doing it. And when we finally found something, the book is over.
And it's interesting because you have this working relationship, which you also have to kind of redefine between you each project, because since the projects are different, your roles in it will be a little different.
Yeah, exactly. And it's more. It's like Nate said. As we draw all in craft and watercolor, sometimes we have to do again a page or cut a panel, and it's very much artisanal.
Yes, because for commission work, one is a computer. For the book, it's important for us to touch the paper, to but for commission work, we use the
We have about 10 more minutes, so rather than go through my questions, I'll open it up to the audience if anyone has a question. Yes?
In Beautiful Darkness, there's sort of, one of the themes of the book is sort of like a harsh reality versus like this colorful inner world of this little girl. And that's sort of shown in the art that you guys make, like these little like cartoony characters versus these moments of like surreal, sometimes like grotesque realism. Would you say then that like in all of your work, you try to, as opposed to like having a distinct style, you try to format the look of the book to the themes of it, and then like do the other two artists, like do you guys do that as well? So let's start with you guys. I'm so sorry. Just do you personalize how you paint or draw the book to the story that you're trying to tell, to the themes?
Yes, that's what is right. We don't want to think about our style, but about the story first. Because if we think too much about our style, we can be stuck, I think. Yeah, like I said, we want to make the best book possible for the story.
I think that the style is something you when you work for 10 years and you look behind and you see your own work and you say, oh, okay, it's my style. But you don't decide it before. It's something that comes with the amount of your work.
That's why we made an art book. It was because we didn't know who we were anymore because we made so much things. And it was a way to figure out who we are.
What our style was incoherent.
Yeah.
And somehow it was because it as Joel said, it comes from us. So
yeah, art's hard, and the way in which to think about this is that it's kind of like telling a joke, right? If somebody tells you a joke and you go retell that joke, you probably put a little bit of your own spin on it, right? It doesn't become your joke, but it sort of changes. You can tell, people know you, they can tell that you told that joke. And art is the same way. You know, like the people that I'm a fan of, the cartoonists and the artists and the work that I'm a fan of, is all of the stuff that you take in. Like that's the entirety of you, right? And so like if I were to go tell you right now to go and copy their style, it would come out as you. It would have some connection to what they did, but it would come out as you because you have different experiences, different sort of ideas, different ways you think about things. You might want to move this line over here. You might like the way this is. You might like make your brush go this way, and you might make your brush go down when they stop. So like all of those things sort of like build like what you actually do when you make a work of art. And the style, that's what style is, right? It's not necessarily like thinking to yourself, this is the way I'm going to draw something. It's like drawing something until that's the way you draw it. Does that make sense? Like it's not a I'm going to make sure. Like I mean, it's like, you know, like as a comic book nerd and geek, before I knew Nate, I was a fan of Nate's, and I would like look at Swallowing Whole and like I want to make word balloons like that, or I want to make sure that my life, you know what I mean? And so when I do that, and when you look at my work, I don't do that. You know what I mean? I don't, and it wasn't like I sat down one day at the table and was like, all right, I got to make sure that I draw like him or anything. I just took that in, and it's just like that's the thing that you sort of internalize about the work. Like, you know, like I look at stuff like, you know, look at Chris Ware and I see the way he uses light sometimes, and I'm like, I want to use light that way. But when I find myself making light, I don't look at what Chris Ware does. I go look at light. Do you know what I mean? Like I look at how light hits a tree, and I'm like, all right, so that's the way I can do that. You know what I mean? So it's like you pull those things in, and it comes out because of who you are, not. And if you are copying somebody else's style, stop. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's not you. Like, you need to, like, relax and don't, like, focus yourself on the things. And I have students that do this all the time that are like, I'm going to draw in this style. And I'm like, no, you're not. That's not the way this works. You know, it's like, don't think style. Think, like, how do I make this so it works? And so that's the way I think.
Trust yourself.
And drawing from life is very important.
Yes.
I found that even going into doing March, I carried a certain level of assumptions about, really, I guess there are components of an artist's style, of your own style, that you don't even see. So March was a very different project for many reasons, and so I had a little bit of anxiety at the very beginning about, you know, even though the writers chose me to draw the project, and to draw John Lewis's story. But I found myself wondering exactly how my touch should best execute John Lewis's vision of his story. And it took a while before I realized that whatever I was already doing was the reason that they chose me in the first place. It takes a minute just to be like, oh, just draw. It's like drawing my own comic. Just be a little more careful about certain things and a little more thorough about other things, and just draw your comic. And a lot of that has to do with trusting that even if you cannot see certain components of your own style, it is there and it can be strong. So sometimes I think there's value in, if not ignoring your stylistic evolution, in recognizing that there are parts you'll never see that other people can.
I think we have time for only one more.
Can I just say one more thing just to connect to that thing? Like, I would say that if you are an artist and you're working, I would say if you always finish a drawing thinking that it's bad and that you need to do something better the next time, you're on the right path. Like, you're literally thinking the right way because you're like ending this thinking, I can do better the next time. Like, there's something wrong. Like, it's just like, it's not like you struggle over till you get it perfect, but you're just like, yeah, this sucks. But I'm going to give it to him anyway, and then the next time it's going to be dope. And then you do that one, it's just like, yeah, this sucks. And the next time it's good. Like, you want to make, if you get to a place where you're like, all right, I'm like awesome. Then you're like, that's when you should start questioning what's happening.
At least you finish what you start.
Yeah.
I'm going to go right for you.
And then I can start handing in second projects. And
Oh, God.
let me go.
Did you have a question? Yes.
Yeah. So we talked a lot about the process of taking a story from kind of conception to final, and we saw that there are so many different steps in the planning process. You know, like dialogue and narrative and composition and everything like that. So I wanted to ask, how do you know when you've done enough planning and it's time to stop planning and kind of start doing the final?
Yeah, I think risk. I probably do 80% of my stuff is in planning and thumbnails and trying to figure out dialogue. And I think that illuminates my personal weaknesses in telling a story. So I think you might do 50% or 30% depending on how thorough you are at a particular stage in telling a story or making comics. But for me, I hit a wall and I'll realize that I haven't really made any progress in 2 months on my book. And this is exclusive to the books that I write and draw. Like if I'm doing a collaboration with someone, I'm much more disciplined that I can move ahead quickly. But often it's a gear-changing exercise. If it's been a month or two and I really haven't done anything but open my notebook and scribble in a few things, then I'll just go ahead and start cutting up paper and I'll start ruling out the borders. And really just the feeling of like, oh, now I'm in the pencil stage. That sense that, oh, this is happening is enough to make the other parts of your brain work. So that you're like, that's good enough. Moving to the next chapter. And you're still working on those earlier layers, like all the way until you send it to the printer, you're rewriting and you're editing and redrawing your book. But sometimes, if you recognize you haven't done anything in a month, you're like, what's the next new thing I can do? I'm going to cut paper and start penciling and just do it.
I start drawing until, I start thumbnailing until I hate thumbnailing and want to ink. And then I'll ink until I hate ink and want to thumbnail. You know what I mean? There's a planning process in which you plan until at some point you just got to get out of your own head and just take a risk. Art is about taking risks. It's literally you're putting yourself out there. You want to pour everything into that drawing that you finished and you think is bad, and put it on there and just hope that everybody likes what you think is good too. I hope that people don't see that I messed up perspective, or I hope that they see that I was trying to mess up perspective. Or, you just got to take a risk. And when you get halfway through a process, you gotta jump. You just gotta jump in and see what happens. Because I think, in my personal opinion, there are two types of people in the world. There are people who do and people who talk about doing. Do you want to be the person that talks about doing or the person that does? And so that's the way I think about it. So when I'm in that process where I'm drawing, I'm thumbnailing and I'm not making anything, and I'm thinking about it, and I'm feeling bad about myself, and I'm not reading really good comments because I feel sad that I haven't done anything for a long time, so I feel guilty. I can't read that stuff because it's so good. And it sucks so bad. I'm just that's when I get on that's when I get to my list, and I'm there are people who make art and people who talk about making art. Which one do I want to be? And so I just jump. I might make something bad. Nobody ever has to see the bad stuff, unless it's published. There's too much planning you can do, but it's all about a process and understanding who you are and what you make and how you make that, and you just gotta take the risk and put yourself out there.
Try not to read comic books. Too many good things, so it's hard. After you go to your page and what am I doing?
Or if you open up a double-page spread in beautiful darkness and there's this beautiful thing in there, and you're just why the hell did I do anything? Or
it was a long time ago.
Or when I first read the first 2 pages of March, and I literally was at Mice and I open it up and I read, not Mice but SPX, and I open it up and I read it and I start to cry. So I have to put it down, put it under the table, and you're just I just read a comic book that started to make me cry. I suck at life. So you want to go out and do, I digress.
I'll push it and take one more question. Anybody? In the back?
So what I noticed from your presentations about your process that I thought was interesting was that the thumbnail, or when you're doing the rough pencils or something, it usually doesn't include any indications for like word bubbles and dialogue. So I was wondering like how you decide what goes where and like how you decide what fits in, and then are you ever forced to like make something shorter just to make it fit and stuff like that?
For me, if I'm doing my own stuff, dialogue and captions come after the pencils almost. But if I'm working on March, once the script was edited enough that it was usable, often I would really be pushing the spatial limits of a caption or a word balloon, especially as the trilogy progressed and we had so much more information to put in there. And a lot of it was, one of the beautiful things about comics is that as long as a story is in multiples of 4 or 8 pages, it really doesn't matter how long it is. You know, once you make a story that's longer than 50 pages, it might as well be 500. You know, you're not going to get an immediate payoff for it. So March Book 3 wound up being so long precisely because we needed to recognize that we had to give breathing room, and we often wouldn't see that we needed breathing room until we got to that thumbnail stage, or past the thumbnail stage, where I was actually penciling and lettering. We were like, oh, okay, that whole scene is 2 extra pages. And we were like, okay, then we need a buffer here to add a page later so that things are still on the correct alignment of left and right sides of the paper. And a lot of that is just taking the pressure off. Yeah. If you run out of space, who cares? Add a page. And just you work backwards from there to make everything fit in. Yeah, like that's the beauty of comics. It doesn't really matter.
Add 2 pages. Yeah. You got to keep the imagination up. My compositions do take in consideration where to put bubbles. Word bubbles are words. And I was really guilty of not doing that earlier. And so when you look at my earlier work, you can see where I actually do go back in and change things, or this needs to be a little bit smaller to fit in that thing. And so after looking at that and sort of like, you just got to analyze your work a lot and look back at what you're doing and sort of be very self-critical. I don't mean like self-critical to the point where you're like, I don't, like I suck at life, like I said earlier, but self-critical, like how can I get this better? Like how can I do this better? And one of the things I noticed is that I didn't leave room, or I didn't leave space in the compositions, because I was building the compositions without thinking about the one major element, which was like text that's going to be there. And so when there are places where, I consider the text in the same way, or the word balloons in the exact same ways I consider every other element in there. So like, I don't necessarily draw it, but I actually leave spaces for it where I think this is going to work, so that I think the composition works. And I try to make sure that the composition in any given panel moves in a way that guides you to the word balloons, so that it's like, so it makes sense. Like, these clouds have a little specific part in them because that's where you're going to put a word balloon. Because without it, it should look dead, unless you're like dealing with that. So I try to make sure that I place, I didn't do it earlier, and what I think about now is like, legibility. Where's the first place that the eye is going to go? Where do I want that eye to go? So, a national inclination, if you read, Western civilization, you read from left to right. So it's like, I'm going to put the word balloon over here unless there's something I want you to see second. And then like, I'll put the word balloon in a different place. I'll hide it and make you look for it. Like if I want you to look at an entire spread first and then find the word balloon, that's the way I do it. I'll put like the entire spread. So you have to look for that, where that's going to go. And then you find that word balloon so that you've actually seen everything else. Because I think comics work best when you don't realize you're reading and you don't realize you're looking at a page. Like you don't realize, you're like, I didn't even look at that page. But if I want you to look, I should like actively try to make you look at it. So like, how do you do that? Well, I hide the words in a place that you have to actually look around for it. So when you're looking for it, you go, oh, like I've seen all those things you do, because I don't want to have to draw all that stuff and people spend like 2 seconds on it. Like, that's like the worst thing ever. Like I spent hours of my life drawing that. People just like flip through like that. Like, whatever, Joel. So like, yeah, I think about it in the process, and I think about how it works and sort of like the way you work legibility and what the purpose of that page is. Exactly the same.
Except in the French publishing, you're more restricted in your page lengths.
Yeah, we can't add 2 pages like that. Oh no. So we will
change because the never book was only 5 5 pages always. Changed now with graphic novels. Now we can make a lot of pages, but we are less paid.
We have to think about it.
Yeah, we don't add pages.
But we think of the composition of the pages, as Joel said, and the text and the drawings are part of the pages, and the patterns we all think, and we work with 2 pages always to have the right, yes.
Well, we'll run over, but it was great. Thanks, everybody.